Hi guys, welcome to my channel and my very first YouTube video. This is such an unusual format for me. I'm so used to filming TikToks or doing posts on Instagram. So it's really exciting to do a video here. And last year I went on this challenge to spend only $50 on non-essentials throughout the entire year, throughout all of 2023. And the biggest question I've gotten is, how were you able to sustain this journey? And although I didn't do it perfectly, there are quite a few things that I integrated into my day-to-day that helped me have as much success as I did. And so I will be sharing those tips with you right now. Now, I know when I watch a YouTube video, I want the creator to get straight to the point. So I'm gonna do my best to keep this video short and concise and direct. So for those of you who may be curious as to what the specific rules were to my $50 non-essential challenge, I will be doing another video on that shortly, but you're also welcome to check out my page on TikTok, where I go into more detail as to how my budget was laid out, what I consider to be a non-essential item, what I consider to be an essential item, and all of that good stuff. Let's get into it. First and foremost is that your perspective will set you free. Budgeting is not fun. By its nature, it's restrictive, right? You're having to refrain from spending a certain way. You're having to refrain from certain things so that you can focus on a particular goal. It could be saving, it could be investing more, it could be paying off debt, whatever goal you may specifically have. The point is budgeting is about bringing you to that finish line, and it's going to cause you to have to refrain on typical behavior. And that's never by nature fun, right? As human beings, we like to have that instant gratification and to just, be able to do what we want when we want it. That's natural. So given that circumstance, it's really important that when you start off on a journey where you know it's going to require a lot of you, you have to have your head right. It does not help to go into a budgeting experience and saying, man, this sucks, or I really wish I didn't have to do this, or I hate being here, my life is so miserable. That's not only gonna make you feel miserable, but also it's gonna make it really easy for you to just break your budget altogether. So the one thing I talk about all the time in my journey to spending only $50 on non-essential was the power of the two reality rule, which is my belief that essentially there's always a positive and a negative side to any situation. So just focus on the positive. So for me, last year, I would say a big reality was that I'm a young woman who had the ability to travel, to connect with friends. I financially could do these things, right? I could go shopping, I could do a lot. And at the same time, I was missing out on a lot of these opportunities because I was budgeting, right? That is very true. That is a very real reality that I had last year. Another real reality that I had last year was that I was able to practice keeping my word to myself. I was able to practice the skill of discipline, which I think is applicable in not just with money, but in a lot of spaces of life. I was able to really be more present in my relationships because the types of outings I was having with my friends and family members weren't necessarily tied to big events or expensive events, but more so just being able to get out and be in nature, do things that were free, low cost, and affordable. It was very enriching. And that was also a very real experience, right? So both things existed, but I focused on the positive. And so if you know that you're gonna have to put yourself in a situation soon where maybe you're not spending, just $50 on non-essentials, you're doing something, maybe it's a larger budget that you have. The reality is it's not always going to be fun, but you have to remind yourself why you're doing it. And you also have to remind yourself that life is still beautiful even when you're on this budget, and focus on that tunnel vision on the positive side of budgeting. The second thing that I'll say is super important and highly overlooked when it comes to budgeting is you just have to identify your triggers. So what I did before I started my $50 challenge was the month before I attempted like a sample, I did like a demo month of being on a $50 non-essential budget, and it went horribly. Like the first 2 weeks I did great. I wasn't really spending. And then the last 2 weeks, I just, was just doing what I wanted to do essentially. But what was great was through those 4 weeks, I was able to really assess what caused me to behave when I was behaving and what caused me to misbehave when I was misbehaving. And one thing for me was just my friends. It wasn't that they were trying to influence me in a negative way, but maybe I would be at home doing something, or I had plans to do something low key, and then someone wants to go shopping for the day, or go check out sales because it's a holiday weekend or something like that. And before you know it, you're caught up in the storm of spending and breaking your budget because you didn't put boundaries in place. So going into this challenge, I really knew, okay, I need to make sure that throughout this year, if someone is asking me to do something that is definitely going to cause me to break my budget, I have to be able to put those boundaries in place, right? I have to be able to have that conversation with them. Another thing was just being very sensitive of my environment and my triggers. At the end of the day, if I walk into Target and I just need to get toothpaste, but I start walking around the clothing section or the home furniture section, I'm gonna be tempted to buy other things that I wasn't planning on buying or didn't even need. And so knowing this, I just did my best to stay out of certain stores, to stay off of certain websites, unless I absolutely needed something. And when I needed to grab it, I was, again, tunnel vision on what it was that I needed, and then I left. And that was super helpful in my journey in terms of just being disciplined. And I think a lot of people overlook that. If you know that you are just a sucker for what's a common story? I'm trying to think of a famous, if you know that you're just, what's a famous store that people shop at? There we go, Zara. If you know that you are a frequent shopper at Zara, don't go into Zara, right? Stay away from Zara. If you know that when Amazon has sales on their homepage that you tend to buy things that you don't need, stay off of Amazon. Unless you need to actually buy something, type in your product, buy it, and get off the website. So just stay away from the things that push you in the wrong direction. If family members or friends are that issue, then sit down and have a conversation with them. But protecting your boundaries, protecting yourself from being put in situations where you're triggered is super important in terms of being disciplined. The third thing I did was embrace selfishness. I know that word has a really bad rep, but I think that selfishness is a huge part of success in various areas. And you can still be selfish with love. It doesn't mean that you have to be cold-hearted or mean to the people that you care about. But at the end of the day, your goals are your responsibility. And you can't put that on, it's not your mom's job to hold you accountable, your best friend's job to hold you accountable, your cousin's job. It's your job. And when it's your job, you got to do whatever it takes to make sure that you are helping yourself get across the finish line. And if I accommodated everyone's request to go out, every holiday or every event that requires or typically requires a gift, if I was just overly accommodating everyone else's needs last year, I would not have saved, over $17,000 in my journey. I just wouldn't have. It's too expensive to do all of these things. And so you have to lovingly be able to say, no, I'm sorry. This year I'm focusing on this, or maybe it's not this year, but this month or these next couple of months, I'm really focused on X, Y, Z, and I'm just not able to do it. And if you don't want to give an explanation, you don't even have to give an explanation. You can just say, I'm unable to attend, or, I'm unable to give a gift at this time, but I can, maybe come up with something or bring a gift in a few months to make up for it. But you have to be willing to put those boundaries in place and be firm about it and unapologetic about it. And I think it's important to tie selfishness in with the two reality rule. Putting boundaries in place can be very uncomfortable, especially when it's someone that you're very close to. It's hard to say no, or to say, I'm not going to be able to do this, and that it would disappoint them. And I think one way you can look at that journey is it's teaching you how to develop better boundaries. Budget teaches you how to learn to speak up for yourself, to speak up for your needs, and to put yourself first. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And again, it doesn't have to be done in a cruel way. You can still say no, you can still pass on opportunities and events, you can still express what your current needs and goals are without hurting someone else. And I can make a video going into depth about this if that's what you want. So comment below if you're interested in hearing better ways to establish boundaries. The last and most important step of budgeting is resilience. And, a lot of people, I think, go into budgeting with the perspective that they need to do it right. And when they do it wrong, they need to give up. I tried to budget for 2 weeks, I failed, so I'll try again next month, or I won't try again at all. And that mentality is so toxic. I had so many hiccups throughout 2023. Some I shared publicly, some I kept to myself. But there were so many moments where I had momentum and then something happened that was either in my control or not, and it was a setback. And if I had decided to not keep going, I wouldn't have saved as much as I did. You have to go into budgeting realizing that it's a roller coaster. Life is a roller coaster. There's ups, there's downs, there's positives, there's negatives. There's gonna be good days, there's gonna be bad days. That comes with it. And you have to learn how to ebb and flow with life and with that experience. I remember going into the challenge, I was so excited and nervous, but at the same time was happy to see the momentum that I was making. And 26 days into the challenge, my grandma passed away. And I had to take a flight to go out and see her. And fortunately, I was able to use credit card points to go to the funeral, not to see her, but to go to the funeral. But there were other funeral expenses that came out of pocket. And so some momentum that I had built had completely gone away within the first month of the challenge. That was discouraging. That didn't feel great, And then once I was actually out there was a little bit more money that I had spent. There were unexpected expenses with my pet throughout the year. And that wasn't fun to deal with. There were moments where I didn't have a great day and I wanted to spend on something, and maybe I allowed myself to indulge on one too many coffees in the month or whatever the case may be. But the point was that I didn't always stick to my budget perfectly. And that is okay. At no point should you judge yourself for falling short of your goal. You just got to keep going. And every single day in 2023 on this challenge, I made the decision to keep going, to keep trying. Okay, I broke my budget by deciding to do this, but tomorrow I'm going to really do my best to make sure that I'm in line, right? And so that is the experience, is just be ready to put your boxing gloves on and to just give it your best fight. And if you fall short, you fall short, but you're still going to be so much further ahead had you not tried at all. The one thing I want people to take away is that I did not stick to my $50 budget perfectly. There were more months that I went slightly over budget than stayed under budget. And that is okay. The journey isn't about perfection. The journey is about progress and development. And who I am today is a product of the work that I put in times past to get here. So if you find yourself in a space where you want to have a healthier relationship with money, or you really want to challenge yourself to be, disciplined to work towards a particular goal, I encourage you to start with understanding that a healthy perspective is everything. Go into it with a healthy attitude, and when things happen that aren't so positive, try to fixate on the positive side, right? Embrace the 2 reality rule, indulge in it, and it will make the experience feel a lot more positive. I challenge you to identify what has kept you from making those goals. What is it that's gotten in your way? And then figure out creatively how you can avoid those triggers and, make sure that going forward it's not an issue. And then be okay with being selfish, right? Be okay with putting yourself first. Be okay with lovingly expressing what you need and what boundaries you have, and telling people no, telling people that you have things that you're working on, and unfortunately the request that's being asked of you takes you away from your goal. Practice those boundaries. And if you don't have them, research ways, read ways, study ways, go on TikTok to find tips, or watch YouTube videos on how to develop healthier boundaries with your loved ones. And then lastly, be ready to be resilient, because the journey is going to test you at some point. Be ready to get back up, dust yourself off, and try again. And those are my tips to how to stay disciplined on a very tight budget. Stay tuned for more videos.